Welcome to the Early Bird Podcast with Andrew Garrison. My name is Andrew Garrison, and this is a show where we talk about sports in the state of Indiana. It is a wild day to be a sports fan, maybe not in the state of Indiana, and that's why we're going to start this episode with the national segment. We're going to start this episode talking about the Dallas Mavericks. I just think this Luka Doncic trade is so insane that we have to talk about it prior to talking about anything that's happening in Indiana, despite it being an Indiana-focused show. So let's talk about this trade, the Luka Doncic trade, blockbuster, super blockbuster, unbelievable. Let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks and why maybe they might be fine. Maybe they still could be title contenders in the next couple years, perhaps. Let's talk about the same things for the Lakers. But I want to start just by emphasizing the moment, right? This is undeniably, in my opinion, a where were you when moment. Most people were in bed. This happened at like 1 a.m. Middle of the night, where were you when Luka Doncic got traded? I wake up, I go to get water middle of the night, and then check my phone, and every group chat's blowing up. Every CBS Sports, ESPN, whatever app you have blowing up. Luka Doncic is traded to the LA Lakers. This sent shockwaves through the sports world. It is almost overshadowing the Super Bowl in some ways, just because Chiefs, Eagles, who really cares? We'll preview that game in a couple days on Thursday, ahead of it occurring on Sunday. But this trade, the Lakers receive Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris, and the Mavericks receive Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. And the Jazz receive Jalen Hood-Schifino, a 2025 second-round pick, and another 2025 second-round pick. So the question is why, right? Why in the world would this happen? On the Lakers side, it makes a whole lot more sense. They're investing in their future. People are, one idea circulating is that Anthony Davis leaving could potentially rub LeBron the wrong way and might motivate LeBron to leave or something along those lines. Or regardless, there'll just be disgruntlement there. But the Lakers aren't thinking in the short term. They're thinking past LeBron. They're thinking maybe this is LeBron's last year. Maybe he has a couple more in him. Regardless, the Lakers are thinking after LeBron, after AD, because their careers are close to ending. They are on the older side. Past that, what are the Lakers going to do? Because we've seen this problem occur before. Once the Lakers lost Kobe to retirement, they were lost. The Lakers were lost. It's really just the best way to describe it. I feel like consistently lottery team, the LA Lakers were. And then they stumbled upon LeBron or brought in LeBron, and they were fantastic. They won a championship. They're looking to win another one. Now it looks like they can even this year. We'll talk about that in a second. But one day LeBron's going to be gone, right? One day he's going to retire. And the future isn't Bronny James, right? And if you look at the Lakers roster, you really see LeBron, AD, and a whole lot of supporting cast, right? Which is totally fine. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Lakers are intriguing and fun to watch, perhaps. But what's your plan after that? Now, clearly, it's Luka Doncic, which is one of the best ways the Lakers possibly could have gone with this. I have no idea how they pulled this off, but somehow, some way, the LA Lakers have Luka Doncic now on their roster. So they're investing in their future. The Mavericks, on the other hand, are thinking short term. And this is something that I think is important with this trade, is that you got to keep in mind that the Lakers and Mavericks have different goals, right? By the way, I still think that this trade was absolutely horrific and the Mavericks made a very big mistake. However, I think it is maybe not as bad as people are making it out to be. The Mavericks are prioritizing defense. There were conditioning concerns with Luka. I don't know anything about that, really. Obviously, don't know Luka Doncic, so I don't want to speak on that too much. Whatever's true is whatever's true, I suppose. But the Mavericks, too, clearly are prioritizing defense because Luka Doncic is a bona fide scorer and Anthony Davis is a bona fide defender. Now, this is insane because last season the Dallas Mavericks went to the finals. They won the Western Conference last year. That is important to remember. They go to the NBA Finals, and sure, they weren't the one seed in the West. They were, the 4 or 5, knocked out the Thunder, made their way to the finals. Regardless, the Mavericks make it to the NBA Finals, and if you go back and watch that finals, you got to look at why the Mavericks didn't win, right? What was the gap between the Celtics and the Mavericks? So the Celtics were objectively the better team in that series. So that's the question, is why? What were the Mavericks missing, perhaps? What do the Celtics have the Mavericks didn't? And to me, the answer is a third premier scorer. Mavericks had Luka, Mavericks had Kyrie, but they didn't have that premier third scorer that, to me, I could look at and say, that's the guy that's going to step up in a moment like that. On the other side, the Celtics, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, you go down the list, they definitely had guys that were a depth of scoring distribution, right? They had multiple guys that it felt like could hit the big shot at the end of the game. Really, for the Mavericks, it was just Luka and Kyrie was shaky in his own right. So that's what we thought that the Mavericks were missing, right? Is a third premier scorer. And then this offseason, they went out and got him. This offseason, they got Klay Thompson. They bring in Klay Thompson. And then all of a sudden, the question is, the Mavericks for real could run it back. The Mavericks could for real be the best team in the West. And I remember thinking that this summer, realizing that Luka, Kyrie, and Klay were going to be on the same team. And they went through injury concerns, and maybe there's been cohesion issues, whatever. They've struggled. They're, I think, 7th. The Mavericks are, with injuries, like 7th in the West right now. Still, they're probably, with Luka, without Luka, whatever, a playoff team, and a team that, in a West that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, still could be a team that could make a run. I was thinking about this just 2 weeks prior to this trade happening. I was looking at the West standings, and if you go down, Thunder, Rockets, Grizzlies, barely any playoff experience across the board for all three of those teams. The Nuggets are legit, but maybe it's not their year. The Lakers were legit still, but had struggles. You just go down the list, right? And the Mavericks seem to me to be the team with the most playoff experience in the last 3 years, perhaps, maybe besides the Lakers. Mavericks absolutely could have made a run in the playoffs once again. And it's insane because they trade away their, not Klay, not Kyrie, they trade away their face of their franchise, their generational talent, and Luka Doncic, after picking up what we thought was the third premier scorer, the last missing piece to making a finals run. We thought they were good. We thought they were complete. We thought they had the team that they could win a ring with once they brought in Klay. And now all of a sudden, the entire face of the franchise is entirely changing. Kyrie Irving is now the face of the franchise, which is not something that we thought we would be saying 5 years ago, 10 years ago. That's an insane thing to suggest. So how does this impact this season, right? For Dallas, I mentioned how the West lacks playoff experience and a true favorite to win it all. And although Kyrie, Klay, and AD are all old, although they are all washed up, some could say, perhaps, the Mavs have that. Kyrie Irving has won championships. Klay Thompson has won championships. They played in NBA Finals against one another. Anthony Davis, actually, won a championship with the Lakers. Plenty of playoff experience across the board. They're consistently in the playoffs. These are the stars that you see in the playoffs year after year after year. So the Mavs are really going all in on the next 1 to 3 years, and the reason why we know that is because Kyrie, Klay, and AD are all going out, right? They're all on their way out in their careers. Nico Harrison, one of the things he said in a press conference or a media publicity moment, speaking on this trade, he said that AD fit their timeline more, which is objectively true because Kyrie is on his way out in the next few years, Klay on his way out in the next few years, AD on his way out in the next few years. So I suppose the idea would be win a championship with this group and then fully reset. The reason why I disagree with that is because you can really have the same effect while keeping Luka. And Luka absolutely provides right away, instantly, you have a chance to make the playoffs every single year if you have Luka Doncic on your team, as long as everyone's healthy and things like that. And so, sure, Kyrie and Klay and Luka, Kyrie and Klay are going to retire soon, right? They're gonna leave the league soon, and it's just Luka, but you can still rebuild around Luka and reload with that new team and look to do the same thing the next year in terms of going out and winning another championship. It was very interesting to me that the argument was we're going to fully reset after we have these guys all leave. Maybe they know something about future drafts that I don't. I have no idea. Regardless, it confuses me, and I feel like Luka still should be the face of this franchise until the end of his career, and you can always build around Luka. No matter who retires, no matter who leaves, no matter who falls off, no matter who becomes washed up, you can always build around Luka. Maybe they thought that wasn't the case because of the conditioning concerns or whatever else. Maybe they know more. Well, they definitely know more than me. Maybe they know more than me in a way where I sound ignorant in this moment. But the Mavs obviously are going all in on the next 1 to 3 years because Luka's going to last much further than that. They give him away. It's Kyrie, Klay, and AD in their last few years of their careers. Can they pull together and win a championship in Dallas? This was probably not the move to maximize their potential of winning a championship because Luka took them to a championship finals appearance just last season. But that seems to be the mindset, is next 1 to 3 years, let's go win a championship with these guys. The Lakers, on the other hand, are trying to invest in their future and see a world without LeBron in the future because that's something that's going to become much more real, much more quickly. So the other question with that, and I mentioned how the Mavs are potentially wanting potentially wanted a third premier scorer, right? They had Luka and Kyrie, they added Klay, now they have 3 big-time scorers that can hit the shot at the end of the game. Maybe their improved defense with Anthony Davis offsets their need to score, right? Maybe it makes it so that they don't need to have a third premier scorer because they have the defense to keep the other team perhaps limited in the scoring margin across the board. And on the flip side with that, it is true also that Anthony Davis is a big and Kyrie Irving is a backcourt guy. You now have effectively one forward and one guard, and really two guards with Clay, rather than just having three guards and no front court, which is what the Mavericks looked like before. Then there's the argument that there's positionless basketball, right, where Anthony Davis isn't really a forward because what even is a forward in 2025, right? What even is a center? What even is a guard, whatever? So Anthony Davis, sure, you have a big guy, you still have a shooter, two shooters. Maybe you're a little bit more balanced. Maybe you're a little bit more defensively oriented. If that's the direction that the Mavericks want to go, that's fine. The only way they win this trade is if they win a ring with Anthony Davis in these next 1 to 3 years. Maybe it's this year. They're going to struggle because, again, everyone is older, and sure, this West doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. It is very important that Kyrie, Clay, and AD have playoff experience. They're not going to be as nervous, perhaps. They'll be more composed across the board. Maybe if their improved defense offsets their need to score, and if the Mavericks can make a run, they can do something similar to what they did last year and maybe finish the job, because the best team in the East right now is the Cavaliers, who also don't have very much playoff experience. Absolutely, this could be a moment where the Mavericks surprise everybody, win a ring, and then really make us question whether or not they are a team that really messed up in this trade. But I think it's more likely that the Lakers go ahead and win a ring this year, because LeBron lost his guy, but gains a young superstar. LeBron, really great friends with Anthony Davis. Obviously, they had a great connection. Brings in Luka Doncic. I'm sure they'll get along perfectly well, although it's still unfortunate that LeBron loses some of that team chemistry. And LA now looks to be in prime position to take back the West. And maybe not this year, a little bit too far into the season, but the LA Lakers look like they are in a position to take back the West with those scores in LeBron and Luka Doncic and that supporting cast. Guys like Austin Reeves, Hachimura, great example, right? That supporting cast and those stars on the Lakers in this confusing Western Conference, I would be afraid of the LA Lakers amidst all the chaos, right? I'm confident that the West playoffs are going to be insane because we have no idea how good every team really is in that period of time. The Thunder lost to the Mavericks in the second round last season. The Rockets haven't been there. The Grizzlies haven't been there. The Nuggets are what they are, a sneaky team that could accidentally make the finals. The Lakers now, we have no idea what they're going to look like. Same with the Mavericks. The Clippers are confusing. It's a confusing West. It's a chaotic West. It's the wild West in the NBA, and it seems like the Lakers are the team now with the most star power, and they could potentially find their way in the finals once again and winning another championship. The Mavericks on the other side, different philosophy, different focus, different time window. They could win a championship themselves as well. Still, it is a confusing situation. It is a shocking and alarming situation. The Dallas Mavericks still might be title contenders, but it's certainly much more likely this year that the Lakers are the team to make it happen. I am going to remember where I was, what I was doing. I'm going to vividly remember the period of time in which I realized that Luka Doncic was going to the LA Lakers very vividly for a very long time, and I'm very excited to see who ends up winning this trade in the end. Okay, let's talk about the Pacers. Let's get back into Indiana here. The question that I'm going to ask is whether or not the Pacers really could trade Myles Turner, because there are conversations, whisperings, mumblings, grumblings about the idea that the Pacers could be looking to give up Myles Turner at the deadline. Pacers are 10-2 in January, bona fide championship contender, so why in the world would you want to get rid of Myles Turner? Now, just as a preface, I don't think they will. I don't think they do want that. I think they're looking to keep Myles Turner forever, and certainly for the rest of the season. But he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, so it's very possible that the Pacers lose Myles Turner and don't get anything in return. Sure, they'd have a clearer cap. They'd have more cap space. They can pay everyone more. They can bring in more guys. But at the end of the day, Myles Turner could leave for nothing in return if they struggle to re-sign him at the end of the season. That is likely that they'll struggle to re-sign at the end of the season because the Pacers are already in position to go over the luxury tax, already in position to have to pay the luxury tax because their roster is so expensive. After a lot of success Myles Turner has had in recent years, it's likely that he's going to deserve a sizable raise. I don't know if the Pacers are going to be able to fully cover that base, and maybe another team can. Certainly another team could. Maybe that's where Myles Turner is headed after this. So can the Pacers pay him? That's the big question. and they absolutely could lose him and get nothing in return in free agency. So the question is just why not get ahead of the game and trade him now, potentially retool the roster a little bit, the roster composition, and then move forward. That's a question of where they are right now. I think that the Pacers should absolutely keep Myles Turner because I think he's a critical part of this run to a championship. I think the Pacers can win a championship this year, and things might get a little bit tricky in the offseason if Myles Turner and other contract situations, then you still got to bring in guys in the draft. It's going to get difficult for the Pacers to figure out what they're going to do. The question for me is whether or not we're focusing on this season or the future more, and that's going to dictate perhaps the future of Myles Turner. So what could they get? If they were to trade Myles Turner, what would they get in return? Certainly a starting caliber center to secure the future, right? A younger, cheaper center, someone like that. Thomas Sorber and Derek Queen are in Indiana's range of the draft, so those are two guys likely to be in this draft class. There's not much motivation to run out and grab a first-round pick, right? If you're looking to retool and get someone cheaper and younger at that position, at the center position, someone that can also shoot, Thomas Sorber, Derek Queen are in their range of the draft, so already they could get Sorber or Queen if they wanted to. There's really not that much motivation to, again, go out and grab a first-round pick from another team for Myles Turner. So you almost need a center already, and most of them are similar to Myles Turner, maybe a little bit worse. I think that the Pacers would be downgrading at the position if they tried to retool at center. And if you try to bring in someone like Cam Johnson or some guard, I just think the Pacers are okay in the backcourt. I think they're totally fine. I don't think they need any help this season. Maybe in the offseason we'll disagree, but right now in the middle of the season, I think the Pacers reloading, moving forward with the guys that they have is going to be the right decision. That would create a void, right? Getting rid of Myles Turner would create a void in the front court, which was our greatest liability earlier in the year. Sure, that was almost entirely because of injury, but they would lose a valuable piece once again. So with the backcourt, right? Myles Turner is a legitimate presence from three. We'd lose some production from around the three-point line. So the front court would lose a major contributor on defense especially. The backcourt would lose a contributor on offense. I think that a trade of Myles Turner would, maybe be logical in the long term. I just don't think that we really care about the long term because the Pacers, after the win over the Jazz last night, are 11-2 in 2025, and they are absolutely a playoff contending, certainly a playoff team and a championship contending team, in my opinion, as well. Like I said, this team can win a championship. Myles Turner's a true Pacer. He's been around forever. He deserves to retire an Indiana Pacer. A dual threat guy, right? He shoots a three at the highest level. He blocks shots. He's a wall on defense down low. He averages 15 and 7 this season. I don't want to trade Turner, right? The championship window is open. The Pacers are capable of winning it all this season and in the few seasons to come. There's no need to stack capital for the future, right? This is arguably the prime period of time for this roster core to reach the pinnacle of the league. If the Pacers don't win a championship with this group, then if the Pacers don't win a championship in the next 1 to 3 years, then this group probably won't win one ever, right? This is the prime peak period of Tyrese Halliburton, of I suppose Myles Turner, of Pascal Siakam, of Andrew Nembhard, of Aaron Nesmith. If it's not going to happen with these guys in the next few years, it may not happen with these guys at all, and the team that does win a championship next in Indiana is going to look a whole lot different than this. There's some other trades, perhaps, that the Pacers could indulge in, I would say. This roster is expensive. There's a surplus of role player guards. We know that, right? A lot of bench guys coming off the bench to play at the guard position. Do we see Obi Toppin go? Maybe we see Jarris Walker go. That's a possibility as well. But what would we bring in, right? I don't see what the motivation would be other than getting rid of players. I don't know what we could get back. Sure, maybe draft picks. I just don't see much value in a risky move like that where you're betting on the future to get rid of a role player guy that you might appreciate having in the playoffs down the stretch, especially if injuries occur, as we saw last season. Injuries occurred for Indiana. We lost Benedict Mathurin. We lost Tyrese Halliburton for some time. Still, this team was able to persevere. And again, like I said, the finals window is open, right? Why not run it back with the team that made the Eastern Conference Finals last season? Why not? And they have Pascal Siakam for the full year this year. Benedict Mathurin's back from injury. A healthy Pacers team is truly capable of anything, in my opinion. They're the best team in 2025. They're 10-2, now 11-2. There's nobody better in 2025. To me, there's no need to make a move. Now, we'll see how it goes, and maybe in the future we regret this if we don't win a championship and Myles Turner ends up costing an exorbitant amount of money, or we have to get rid of him and can't get much in return, or whatever it is. I just think that right now the focus is this season because I think the Pacers can win a championship this season. And that's what I'm most excited to see happen moving forward. Okay, we're going to switch to football. We're going to talk about, this is a shorter show, objectively. We're going to talk about IU football, and we're going to talk about Notre Dame football. We're going to talk about their opponents in 2025, their schedule, some ceilings, some floors. The vibe heading in for IU football to the season is reload for success and potentially run it back to the playoff. The schedule. I'm going to run through the schedule, and then we're going to break it down. IU opens the season at home against Old Dominion. They then play Kennesaw State, Indiana State, Illinois in their first conference game, at Iowa, at Oregon, Michigan State, UCLA, at Maryland, at Penn State, Wisconsin, and at Purdue. So home games, right? If you're a season ticket holder or if you are looking to go to games, the first three are not that much, right? Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. And then the last four are a bit better. Illinois, big game, maybe one of the biggest games on the schedule. Michigan State, UCLA, Wisconsin, another nice one there. We'll get to see Zionsville's Eugene Hilton potentially in that game. So there's a few categories. There's really three categories to me that I see with this group of games. Reasonably expected wins is the first category. There are 6 games that I think Indiana should be winning with no issue. Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State are the obvious ones. I think Michigan State at home, routine victory. UCLA at home, routine victory. Purdue, maybe a more difficult one just because it's an Old Oak and Bucket game, just because it's on the road. Probably a routine victory against Purdue as well. We can expect those 6 wins, in my opinion. That's why the floor for the Indiana Hoosiers, to me, is 6-6. And then we've got some sneaky trap spots, right? Some games that people aren't maybe circling, because what you're circling right away is at Oregon and at Penn State. But some sneaky trap spots where the Indiana Hoosiers could potentially take a loss. Illinois is the best example to me. That home game in week 4 right away. They've had 3 cupcakes to kind of get ready for it. And then you have Illinois right away. They finished the season ranked number 16. They were 10-3 last season. That is a team that people don't really understand fully the scope of how good they are. Illinois at Iowa, just because it's on the road, is a potentially tough one. At Maryland, another potentially tough one for the same reason. And Wisconsin at home, to me, is another trap spot. So Indiana, their schedule is, in my opinion, more difficult just because you have 2 premier games in Oregon and Penn State, which we'll get to in a second, rather than just one in Ohio State, because Michigan didn't end up being what we think they were. But there's a lot of games like the Michigan game, right? Last year, I would say the trap spots were Michigan and Nebraska, and they had both of those games at home. They were both not very difficult for Indiana to deal with, right? The Michigan game, I think, was a very tough win and a very important win that people don't fully appreciate the significance of, in my opinion. And Nebraska win, similar. Michigan and Nebraska, both of those games, those were the sneaky trap spots. There's 2 of those last season. I think there's 4. I think there's double the amount of trap games. I think there's double the amount of impossible task games. And that's the next category, impossible tasks. At Oregon, at Penn State is going to be a massive, massive step forward if they can win any one of those games. And that's the big thing there, right? It's one thing for IU to just reload and maintain. And if they maintain, they'll probably finish 10-2 or 9-3. Or the question is, are they going to elevate, which would be even more insane, to elevate to a level previously unforeseen in modern history for IU football, and that would occur by going to Oregon or to Penn State and winning. That's something they couldn't have done last year, right? Didn't beat Ohio State on the road. Can they beat one of these top-tier playoff teams, true title contenders, Big Ten championship contenders? Can they win one of those games on the road? That is an impossible task. I don't think they will on either one of those games, but if they did, that proves elevation. That proves that they're not only maintaining themselves as a top 15 team in the country maybe, but rather elevating from that and being potentially a team that could legitimately win the Big Ten or legitimately win a national championship. My floor is 6-6. That's if they somehow lose every single one of those trap games, and then, of course, the 2 impossible task games. Ceiling's 10-2. I just don't think they'll get past Oregon or Penn State on the road, barring shenanigans that are very much unforeseen in this moment. But with the roster I'm looking at with IU right now, I think Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, Michigan State, UCLA, Purdue, some breezy wins. Very strong chance of winning against Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Wisconsin. And then Oregon and Penn State, I just think is going to be too tall a task for the Hoosiers. This is a team looking to really retain its place in the college football playoff, which by all accounts is a tall task in its own right. It's going to be difficult. I think the SEC will be better. IU really wasn't supposed to make the playoff after losing to Ohio State, but the SEC blew itself up. So IU, of course, just waltzed in there as that next team. They've got 2 marquee road games. That's going to be very difficult to deal with, the Oregon game and the Penn State game. Can they get in with only 10 wins? I think no, because I don't think they'll have the quality wins to justify landing there. It, of course, depends on the landscape of the sport in December. SEC might blow itself up again. The ACC might kill itself. Like, IU might have opportunities to sneak in with 10 wins and 2 losses. Nonetheless, it's a team looking to take care of business in those 6 games. It should be easy. Avoid traps against Illinois, Maryland, etc. And if possible, knock off a top-shelf opponent on the road. Or they're just going to finish 10-2 and hope for the best, probably miss the playoff, but have another strong year. That's realistically what I see happening with Indiana this year. I don't think they'll be in the playoff. I think they'll be 10-2. It'll be another fantastic season. Signetti will be celebrated. The team will reload for next season, looking to run it back. There's a lot of time to build hype ahead of 2025, and to the playoff, they're going to have to hope to go, and I think that they certainly have a chance of getting there if they can beat Oregon or Penn State. I just don't really think that that's going to happen at the end of the day. All right, let's talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame's got a tough schedule in 2025. They just lost in the national championship. They didn't necessarily expect themselves to. They've built the program to a championship level, right? Now we know that Notre Dame is at the level of a national championship. Do they have the wherewithal to get over the hump is the question left to ask. Let's look at the schedule. It's much more difficult than Indiana's. Notre Dame, they go to Miami to start the year. They play Texas A&M. They play Purdue. They go to Arkansas. They play Boise State, NC State, USC. Then at Boston College, Navy, at Pitt, Syracuse, and at Stanford. That's an impossibly tough start. And if you were listening through all of that, you'll see at Miami, Texas A&M, Boise State, they were all ranked by the end of the year. USC and Arkansas on the road are some underratedly very difficult games as well. Those are some legitimate programs. An SEC program on the road is going to be difficult no matter how you slice it. USC, of course, is always a big-time game. Notre Dame's scheduled tough, which is interesting because they, for real, don't need to. It's not just that there's a 12-team playoff. It's that Notre Dame got in with one bad loss in the playoff easily, right? They were top 4 team in the rankings. Sure, last season was a bit chaotic, but still, Notre Dame did it with no problem with just one loss. Playing a cupcake schedule. Sure, they had the Texas A&M win. They don't need to play this many ranked teams. They don't need to play this many quality opponents, but they are, and they did schedule that way. Great for them. I appreciate that. Very tough start, and then a slide to the finish. After the USC game, they should cruise. Purdue's a nice break, a couple of bye weeks in there, but that opening 5 to 7 games is unreal, right? That opening group of games is absolutely ridiculous. My floor, for that reason, for Notre Dame is 9-3. I think there could be 3 losses on the schedule. They could start 0-2, right? There's some tough spots. I think 9-3 is the floor for Notre Dame if things go poorly. The ceiling's 12-0. They can always go 12-0. My prediction is 11-1. I think there's 1 loss on here. It might be at Miami, and if it's not, then maybe it's at home against Texas A&M after having to go to Miami. Maybe it's the Arkansas game. USC is always difficult. I think there's a loss somewhere in the first 5 to 7 weeks. They totally could go 12-0. But I think 11-1 is probably my prediction for Notre Dame. And really what is important about that is the fact that they're going to be battle-tested going into the playoff, right? Notre Dame is going to be absolutely ready for the college football playoff because they will have played all of these teams back-to-back-to-back so quickly, and they just went to a national championship, and this program is now rich practically after that run to the championship. They're going to be in prime position to potentially succeed moving forward. I'm excited about Notre Dame. They're going to have a very entertaining schedule, a lot of national TV games. I know they have that deal with NBC, but some true national TV games where people are truly tuning in and all eyes are on Notre Dame week after week after week early on in the year. I think that's going to be the case, and I think it's going to be very fun. It's going to be great for Notre Dame. It's going to be great for the sport. It's going to be great for next year's college football playoff race, truly, as we try to decide whether or not Notre Dame is a team that should be considered a title contender once again. Okay, that's all I have for you guys today. I recognize it's a shorter show. It's about half the size. We didn't have a show last week. We're kind of easing back into it. Of course, at the Luka trade and all sorts of craziness across the board. We'll be back on Thursday morning to preview the Super Bowl, for example. We're back on Thursday morning. We've got a few games to preview with basketball. We got Purdue, IU. We got the Pacers all playing games on Thursday or just around Thursday, right? We got to talk about all of them. So it'll be a basketball show again, most likely. We'll talk about the Pacers. We'll talk about IU and Purdue. We'll talk about the Colts again. It's been a while. Got to check back in on them, most likely. And then we'll talk about the Super Bowl. And it should be a fantastic time. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Early Bird Podcast with Andrew Garrison. I'm, of course, Andrew Garrison. I will see you guys again this Thursday.